Um, Welcome everybody. Good to see some new and old faces. And thanks for coming to our first HR webinar for 2023. Happy New Year and all that. Christmas does seem like a long time ago now, I'm sure, for many of us. Today we have been, we've decided to focus on menopause in the workplace. And for a lot of you who work in HR and businesses, you're probably been hearing a lot about this lately, and it's obviously gathering momentum in terms of awareness. And having spoken to Sarah Ridge, who's with us today, who's the Menopause Coach, who's a real expert in this space, it's becoming more and more apparent on how much menopause has been a bit of a taboo subject, like many, and actually the impact of not addressing these things in the workplace and the impact on businesses across a number of different areas. So we thought we would talk about the M word and try and break that taboo a little bit today, and hopefully give them some more information that you can learn from on a personal, professional level, and hopefully some good pointers to take back into the workplace and see what you can do in your businesses to support those with going through menopause, different stages in the workforce. And Gemma's also joining us today. Gemma, our head of HR services and projects at Kingswood Group, and she'll be also sort of giving some information from an HR perspective, what we can be doing. So without further ado, let's crack on. So I am managing the slides. That wasn't planned. So I will need a bit of a nudge when you want me to change. So whoever's speaking, do just give me the word, okay?
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here with you all, and Happy New Year. As Sarah said, I'm really excited to be co-hosting this webinar with the Kingswood Group. Just a bit of background on me and also how our paths crossed. So we met the Kingswood Group. I met Sarah at Basildon Business Expo last year. I am so passionate about effecting change in the workplace, and I just decided that I was just going to go along, chat to as many people as I could, bring up the M word, frighten people a little bit, and just discuss about menopause in the workplace. So we had a chat, and we connected on LinkedIn afterwards. And then, to cut long story short, here we are. Really hope to be doing lots more webinars like this in the future. So yeah, really happy and really excited to be with you all today. So let me introduce myself properly. So as Sarah said, I'm Sarah Ridge, otherwise known as the Menopause Coach. I'm a qualified menopause wellness practitioner, and I look after ladies who are approaching or going through perimenopause or who are postmenopausal. So I coach one-to-one. I also coach via groups, and I have over 2,100 ladies in my private Facebook group, which is called Menopause Matters with Sarah Ridge. It's growing every day. It's interesting, actually, how fast it's grown and how quickly. I only set it up back in September 2021, and it's grown to over 2,000 women in that time. It just shows how needed it is, how much we need the support, how little there is out there already. So I'm really happy to be holding that space on social media and being able to help ladies manage their way through this really difficult time. A bit of background on me, which I thought might be interesting for you guys. So I first became perimenopausal myself, I think, back in 2020. I say I think because if you are going through anything like this yourself, you'll know it's really tricky to pinpoint exactly when it starts. But the main trigger for me at the time was weight gain. I'm a very little, 5'2", and back in 2020, I was the biggest I'd ever been, and I was really uncomfortable and a bit miserable, really. Couldn't really figure out what on earth was going on. Lots of other things were going on as well. Felt bloated, my joints had started to ache, struggling to sleep properly. Things are starting to get a bit sweaty, daytime, nighttime. If you've been through it, or you know someone that's been through it, you'll know that that's quite familiar. And then the brain fog started to creep in as well. I'd start losing my train of thought. I'd have trouble remembering people's names. And you really do start to think you're going a little bit crazy. And it's really unsettling. And if you don't really know what's going on, it's very hard to figure out what's happening. So I began to do lots of research. I do have a background in health and fitness. And I really wanted to try and find ways to naturally figure out what was going on. And I very quickly realized that I was perimenopausal. We're going to talk about these terms a little bit more in a minute, because I know that they can be a little bit confusing. The word menopause has lots of other bits attached to it, which can get a little bit confusing. So we'll talk about more about those in a minute. But yeah, so to cut a long story short, after all that research I did and my background in fitness, I managed to lose 2 stone in weight and discovered a number of ways to get my symptoms under control. And nearly 3 years on, I'm still following the same lifestyle. It's not perfect, but it works for me, and I definitely feel a lot better than I did. So we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Sarah. So let's get on to what menopause is itself. So this is just a little table of what we're going to be talking through in the rest of the webinar. So what is menopause? The menopausal age, the symptoms. It might surprise you how many there actually are. How is menopause affecting businesses and the economy? How can we manage menopause a little bit more effectively in the workplace, and also some practical solutions that you guys might be able to implement or offer as advice as well. So what is menopause? Let's get on to it. What can you expect? Let's bust a few myths as well. What surprises people the most, I think, is that menopause actually only lasts for a single day. And so it's precisely 365 days after a woman has been without a period. Prior to that, you're considered to be perimenopausal, and after that, you are postmenopausal. So myth number 1. Perimenopause doesn't last for very long. Yeah, that's false for most people anyway. It might be a case that for a few, they might not even realize that it's happening. But for the majority of women, it can last for approximately 3 to 5 years. It really does depend on the person. It could be longer than this, unfortunately, or possibly shorter. Or like I say, you might even breeze through it and not even realize that it's happening. But yeah, 3 to 5 years is the average. Myth number 2, you can't get pregnant during menopause. Absolutely false. You definitely can. You absolutely can still get pregnant. If you're still having periods, your ovaries are still producing eggs looking to be fertilized. So it's wise to take precautions if you are perimenopausal. And then another myth for you, everyone will go through exactly the same experience. And this is quite a common misconception. And that's absolutely false as well. Perimenopause will be completely unique for everyone. And one person's journey might be very different to another's. Some, as I said, will breeze through it and not even realize it's happening. But the majority will experience the most common symptoms. And these would be your hot flushes, your night sweats, brain fog, tiredness, weight gain. They're the most common symptoms that most people will experience. So moving on, let's talk about the age that women can become perimenopausal. So if we could just move on to the next slide, Sarah. Sorry, I caught you on the hop. It's just got a picture of some women and there they are. So all of these women pictured here in this slide could be perimenopausal. And that's always a little bit of a shock, I think, to a lot of people. It's a very common misconception that perimenopause only happens when you're considered to be, and I'm going to use the inverted commas, old. The average age for most women is 51. But early perimenopause is much more common than you would think. In my private Facebook group, I've lost count of the amount of women who are in their late 30s, maybe early 40s, are starting to experience some changes, are very confused. They go along to their GP, who categorically tells them that they cannot possibly be perimenopausal. This is absolute rubbish. As I said, I have quite a lot of women in my Facebook group who are lamenting the fact that they can't be taken seriously because they're in their late 30s and early 40s, and their GP is telling them that it can't be happening to them. Early perimenopause seems to be becoming more and more a thing. It might well have been back in previous generations, and my mum, your parents, your mothers, it might have started older. I think lifestyles were very different then. So this probably has a factor to do with this, but perimenopause does seem to be starting earlier and earlier. My advice would be, if that is you, to be determined, be persistent. Also, at your surgery, there might well be a menopause specialist that you can ask to speak to, who might be a little bit more understanding and a bit more sympathetic. And then obviously, of course, if all else fails, you have got the private route that you could go down. There are menopause specialists that you could book in to make an appointment with, separate to your GP. But yeah, just keep pushing, ladies, because it can be hard. Even if you are of perimenopausal age, some GPs seem to be very reluctant to diagnose it. So do keep pushing forward. Yeah, so we'll move on to symptoms, which is the next slide. Yeah, so I'm just going to let you have a little read of that and absorb them all. There are approximately 35 in total, which always shocks a lot of people if you've not really looked into perimenopause and the menopause. 35 is a lot, and there's some in there that yeah, might really surprise you. Things like burning tongue or dry mouth, you know, hair changes, sleep disorders we've talked about. Osteoporosis is a very big thing, definitely worth bearing that in mind, because as you get older as women, we really need to take good care of our bones. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but that, yeah, as you can read in that huge list there, you could experience any of these at any time during your perimenopause. It is worth noting that it's highly unlikely that you're going to experience them all, so don't panic. It's more likely that you'll be experiencing the more common ones. But the one I really want to pick up on before we move on is anxiety. Because that, yeah, sorry, Sarah, going back, one. Anxiety.
I'm just amazed that I know how to use it. Sorry, I'm just.
It's all right. Anxiety is something, I'm going to refer to my Facebook group again because it's such a great point of reference, but it comes up a lot. I can't tell you how often it comes up, from varying degrees of I wake up in the morning and I feel anxious about starting my day, to on the odd occasion, and I must say, with a disclaimer, this is the odd occasion, I have had a couple of ladies who have said they've had suicidal thoughts. It really can be really debilitating. And when we reference anxiety in the workplace, and you're thinking about, you know, high-performing women in the office or in your organization who are holding down you know, a great role. They've been doing a great job for all these years. They've trained so hard. They've climbed the ladder, and then all of a sudden their confidence just falls through the floor and they find that they can't do their job anymore. So this is something to really bear in mind. We'll talk about more practical tips and things that you might be able to put in place to help support these women that might be struggling at work. But it is the one that I wanted to bring up, probably more than anything, actually, because I think it's really relevant in terms of menopause in the workplace and how we can look to manage things moving forward. It is a big issue, and it's something that really needs a lot of support, I think, and a lot of thought in terms of, you know, your organization or the people that you're working with, and the advice that maybe that you could give them. I think that was it about, I just want to mention very quickly before we move on to specifically workplace stuff, is if you are perimenopausal yourself, I'm just going to give you a quick few little bits of advice that might be helpful, or you might be able to pass on to other people that might be experiencing it. So for me personally, diet and lifestyle, as I mentioned at the start, was a really big thing for me. Following a healthy lifestyle, I can't tell you how important it is in terms of managing your symptoms, and it's really I think it's really underestimated. The knee-jerk reaction is to obviously go straight to your GP, and I'm not against HRT at all. I must put that in there. I manage my symptoms naturally, but my group, we chat about HRT all the time, and I do have a lady in my group who is an ex-nurse who helps me in terms of giving support and advice for HRT related issues. But there's no reason why you can't implement a healthy lifestyle to run nicely alongside HRT, or, as we know, not everybody can take it or wants to take it. So it's worth really taking a look at your lifestyle. The big one is sugar. Try and ditch sugar from your diet as much as you can. So we're talking not just the obvious, But sugar, unfortunately, is in pretty much everything that you can buy off the supermarket shelves. So really just take a look at what it is that you're consuming on a daily basis and see if you can't make a few changes there. Exercise regularly. My go-to is HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Great for bone strength, gets the job done really quick. So for busy working women, it's perfect. But it also is excellent for improving your metabolism and really helping balance those blood sugar levels and then helping you get on top of your symptoms. I would advise taking carefully selected supplements, but do your research because there are lots out there and some of them aren't as good as they claim to be. They are packed full of fillers and nasty things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily be wanting to take. So my advice would be to do some research. And yeah, natural remedies. I find great relief from using essential oils. I diffuse them by my bed because I do on the odd occasion have trouble sleeping. So lavender, frankincense, if you diffuse them or you cup your hands in and you inhale before you go to sleep, that can really help. And also magnesium. I'm a great advocate for a magnesium oil spray. They can provide amazing relief as well. But if you are really struggling, as I said, please don't struggle and just keep thinking, oh, I'll just keep on pushing through. Please do make an appointment with your GP and discuss the options. Make a list of your symptoms, be firm, be determined, and ask to speak to a menopause specialist if there is one. Right, now we can move on. Thank you, Sarah. So how is menopause affecting businesses and the economy? So there's a few interesting stats for you here on this slide. So recent research has discovered that the lack of menopause awareness and support is costing London's economy over £2 billion, which is quite scary. 1 in 10 women employed during their menopausal years left their jobs due to not being able to cope with their symptoms. The average cost of employing and training someone new is actually £8,074. That's per person. And then when you add into that the productivity cost, new employees will be working at 70% capacity for the first 6 months on an SSP daily rate. You add all of those together, they're pretty powerful stats. And I think we can probably all agree that every company needs to be acknowledging these figures and looking to possibly make the appropriate changes in their organization if it's necessary. Also worth noting that someone suffering with symptoms might not realize that they're related to menopause for quite some time. So you could have someone in the workplace that's really struggling, but doesn't really know what on earth is going on. And also there are more employees in the workplace now going through menopause rather than going through the childbearing years, because obviously times have changed. So women are staying in the workplace a lot longer now. You know, you're not stopping work to have children and never going back to the workplace again. You know, you have your families, you go back to work. You know, we're working for much longer now, right into 50s, 60s, in some cases even 70s. So there's a very strong chance that you will be going through perimenopause and postmenopause when you are at work. And we have a duty of care, I think, to look after those ladies in the workplace and try and make things a little bit easier. From a legal point of view, just very quickly, menopause is not specifically protected by the Equality Act 2010. But if an employee is put at a disadvantage because of their menopause symptoms, this could be seen as discrimination if related to a protected characteristic like age, disability, gender reassignment, or sex. Employees are protected against being at a disadvantage or treated less favorably because of their age or sex. So this could include less favorable treatment due to menopause because, as I've said, relating to their age or their sex. So it's interesting to bear that in mind. We can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Sarah. How do we manage menopause in the workplace? So I thought this would be a really interesting time to have a quick little poll with all of you, if you're willing to jump in and participate. If you are peri or postmenopausal, would you feel comfortable talking about it in the workplace? Let us know. Interesting. Nearly there. Oh, okay. Nearly finished. So 60, yeah, we've got 63% that have said yes. So I got 65%. and 35% would say no. Yeah, so that's encouraging, I think. So good news that it's not the other way around. But yeah, there's still 35% of you that wouldn't feel comfortable bringing it up at work. So yeah, that's a really interesting split. So yeah, we'll talk some more about that in a second, about how you might feel more comfortable about being able to bring it up at work. So yeah, thank you for participating in that one. Let's move on to the second little poll if we can. So is it the second one come up? Would you feel comfortable with a colleague or a manager approaching you to discuss menopause with you? Now, this is encouraging. I think being able to have open lines of communication is so important in the workplace. So being able to, either have a manager come and check on you and say, hey, is everything okay? Is there anything that I can do to help? Or you being able to go direct to them. It's so important that those lines of communication are there, and that menopause isn't a scary word or something that makes you feel really nervous about bringing up in conversation, because it is so important that we're able to chat about it more freely. So that's a really encouraging stat. I think 94%, over 6% saying no. So thank you for that one. And we've got one more for you. If you're not menopausal, would you be okay with approaching someone in the office to discuss menopause with them? So if you maybe were, working alongside somebody and you were picking up that maybe something wasn't quite right, there might be obvious perimenopausal symptoms that are being flagged up in front of you. Would you feel comfortable going up to that person and saying, hey, is everything okay? Because again, I think that's so important, having the support of your colleagues, being able to actually say the word menopause out loud without, deer in the headlights and, oh my God, why is she bringing that up? I don't want to talk about that. And I think we are 100% female today, which is slightly disappointing. I'm not going to lie. It would have been nice to have some men. But I think certainly for male colleagues in the workplace, this will be a subject, like I said, deer in the headlights time. If they thought that maybe someone in their office was going through some difficult times in relation to perimenopause. So not only is it important, obviously, for female colleagues to support one another, but I think it's really important to maybe start that conversation with the guys in the company, in the organization, so that they know what it is, and also so that they can support colleagues. So, and I think even more so when we're talking about higher level, management, leadership, understanding what it is and being able to hopefully put some things in place. So yes, so 71% said yes on that poll, 29% said no. So that's quite encouraging as well. In fact, all the stats I think have been quite encouraging. So it's really interesting. So thank you for taking part in that. I really appreciate that. It gives us a little feel as to, how you guys are feeling about it. Fantastic. So let's move on to practical solutions. How am I doing for time? I literally have no clue what the time is. Am I good? It is
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Perfect.
So
yeah.
Halfway.
So
just the right slide.
No, next one.
Next one.
Next one. Yeah. So moving on to practical solutions, which is some ideas that you guys might be able to implement either yourselves or suggest as a way of being able to manage things a little bit more effectively in the workplace. So these are just a few. that I've put down on this slide here. Some of them will be glaringly obvious and some might well already be in place. But if they're not, then it's definitely something that you need to discuss. So let's just run through these. So make desk fans available if necessary. As we've discussed, body temperature is an issue. And it can come out of nowhere when you're least expecting it. I mean, the bare necessity is, I think, to make desk fans available. Certainly, I mean, actually, it doesn't really matter what time of the year it is, because it can be 80 degrees outside or -3 when you're having a hot flush. It feels like you're in the Sahara. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter what's going on outside the window. So having a desk fan available, or discussing with your line manager or whoever you feel is appropriate with regards to the temperature in the office. We obviously don't want to make everybody come in and wearing their snow jackets because it's freezing because you're boiling hot, but it's just about being aware. I think it's awareness and being able to have these conversations. A desk fan is a very easy fix, I think. So that's a conversation that you could have. If appropriate, uniforms, consider them the material that they're made from. So if your company or organization insists on you wearing a uniform, could they be redesigned in some kind of material that would make them a little bit more comfortable for perimenopausal or postmenopausal women? So synthetic fibers, I don't know, ladies, if any of you are perimenopausal, oh my God, there's literally nothing worse than having a hot flush when you're wearing something that isn't cotton, or something that's loose fitting and comfortable. So having that discussion about uniform could be really helpful. Or it might be the case that at certain times of the month, when you're feeling a little bit more uncomfortable, you could wear different clothing to work, and that would be acceptable. I'm going to put another one in there as well, which is toilet breaks. Again, organizations, some have very strict rules when it comes to toilet breaks. And I think it's really important to be able to have the conversation about allowing you to visit the bathroom if you really need to go. And as a perimenopausal woman, your periods can fluctuate. You can be very heavy 1 minute, it can come out of nowhere. So being told that you can't visit the bathroom as a perimenopausal woman is really, really difficult. So that's another one to put in there. So you can have a chat to whoever is appropriate with regards to something like a toilet break schedule. So this is one that I'm really, really passionate about, the next one, which is appoint a menopause mentor. So as nice as it would be to have colleagues, management team, your leadership, the CEO, the owner of the company being really supportive when it comes to perimenopause and postmenopausal women, there will still be an element of, I couldn't possibly bring that up with them. So I would love every workplace to appoint a menopause mentor. So somebody that is known company-wide, who is someone who is trusted, who is known to be kind and supportive. They don't have to be necessarily a menopause expert, but it is just somebody that the workplace would feel comfortable approaching if they were struggling. And then they could hold something like a monthly menopause cafe. And I have heard of these happening already, which is amazing. Something that, that you could hold in the staff room or in one of your function rooms, where you could all come together, men and women, to chat about menopause, share experiences, best practices, what could you do to help, and just opening those lines of communication, because it's so important that we are able to discuss it openly and freely. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to a manager about it, then having someone that's a designated menopause mentor might make things a lot easier in the workplace for those women that might be struggling. Next one is an obvious one. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but be kind. I know that phrase comes up a lot in a lot of situations now, and it is obvious that you should be kind, but sometimes it gets forgotten. And women, I think, that are experiencing perimenopause and postmenopause, all you want is just for a little bit of understanding, I think, and being able to express how you're feeling. And sometimes that can be very difficult at work. So if you do think that someone is going through it, be approachable, but really listen to what's being said, which again is a really obvious one. But sometimes I think, we're all so busy, making time to really listen to somebody when they're in trouble. It sometimes falls by the wayside. So it's an obvious one, but I think a really important one. And then that leads nicely on to what can I do to help? How can I best support you as your colleague, as your manager, as your boss? How can I help you through this really difficult stage of your life? It's as I said, the communication is so important, that we establish those lines of communication and keep them open and make sure that we are talking about the N word and not whispering it, which is what we've been doing for a long time. I think that is pretty much it from me. I think I've covered everything, certainly everything that I wanted to get across. As I said, I'm a coach and a trainer. I have my website details here that you can see. So the menopause-coach.co.uk. I would love to welcome all of you ladies over to my Facebook group. It is open to anybody. So anyone, whether you are already on the menopause train or whether you are nowhere near it, there is no harm in knowing what to expect. And being able to support those around you, even if you're not going through it yourself. So it's Menopause Matters with Sarah Ridge. As I said, I'd love to welcome you over there to come and join me. I have written 3 mini courses that I will be sharing with you all. There's a course for staff, there's a course for managers, and there's a course for leadership. As I said, the mini courses, basically summing up everything that I've just covered with you in this webinar. So if you are looking to teach and train your own staff or forward it on to organisations that you're working with, it's a perfect little way of being able to very quickly educate the people around you on menopause and how it impacts the workplace and what you can do to hopefully help things in the future. So we will be pinging an email around after the webinar is finished. You will find that coming into your inbox with all the details on how you can take advantage of those courses. Yeah, that's it from me. I think I'm going to hand you back to Sarah or Gemma. I think Gemma's just going to have a little chat with you, I think, about Kingswood Group, and then we're going to open up the floor for a quick Q&A afterwards. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. What an insightful, thought-provoking and really engaging session. As someone who is post-menopausal herself, I wish that I had known some of those things beforehand, and I wouldn't have thought I was being quite so odd at the time. So thank you so much for that. And yes, it's really important that we do talk about this subject. As some of you will know, legislation does protect people in the workplace from discrimination. It does protect them, although menopause is not specifically identified as a protected characteristic, open bracket, close bracket, yet. That doesn't mean to say that somebody who is either post or perimenopausal who is experiencing difficulties in the workplace as a result of either of those could not therefore bring about a claim against an organisation. And, in recent times, we have been made aware, I'm sure all you HR professionals will hear about women who have been dismissed from roles because they were unable to operate in the workplace as effectively as they might have done. That can lead to an employment tribunal claim for an unfair dismissal or constructive dismissal if that was the route they went down. And they can also double up with a discrimination claim on the grounds of age, sex, disability or some other, because they are treated less favourably than others in the workplace because of their peri or postmenopausal situation. Businesses do need to think about how they are promoting awareness and making sure that they're providing information, promoting open conversations, as Sarah's talked about, and offering potential adjustments and support for those who come forward and say that they are experiencing difficulties in the workplace. There's actually no current legal requirement for employers to introduce a menopause policy. However, ACAS are strongly recommending that this is in place as a standard in all organisations. And it's a way of demonstrating an organisation's commitment to supporting those who are affected by peri or postmenopausal symptoms in the workplace. As you know, well-written policies are worth their weight in gold. They provide the information they should be providing information to not just those who might be experiencing it, but also those who might be supporting or working alongside those who might be experiencing it. Here at Kingswood Group, we offer a support to clients to develop and implement their own policies and procedures to support them in the workplace, and that includes menopause. We have our own menopause policy within Kingswood Group, which we are all really proud of. Our policies are tailored to the needs of the business because every business is slightly different, and this can also include, as Sarah's alluded to, training. Also, we can provide training for managers and employees alike, not just about the menopause, but generally about performance and equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. We believe passionately that organisations benefit from having clear, well thought out policies that are written in plain English so that everybody can understand it, and that they can engage with it at a level that encourages and enables a deeper understanding of the subject matter. There is no point in just directing people to a specific element of a policy if actually the whole of the policy needs to be looked at holistically. We support them with the development of the policy. We support them with the implementation of the policy and the training and the support mechanisms that sit around that. And that isn't just in relation to menopause, it could be in relation to anything. Just recently been working with organisations to develop really focused anti-bribery and corruption policies, lone working policies, capability related to underperformance, and drug and alcohol policies, which are really important in some organisations, particularly those which have a logistics element to them as well. And aside from policy development and implementation, we offer a wide range of high quality, unique and professional solutions for clients, whether that's to meet recruitment needs, because we do have HR specialism, office and finance recruitment within the organisation, but also to absorb the headache of in-house management of HR and the provision of high quality solutions and services. So we are here to help. We can be on hand for those who just want to explore what they might need without any commitment. And if that's the case, please do get in touch. Contact details are on the slide. And we are always here to provide a sounding board for anyone who might be looking at doing something for themselves and just wants to tap that out with somebody neutral. Back to you.
Back to me.
Opening the floor for Q&A. Sarah, are we moving the slides on?
Yeah, that's
Sorry, Sarah. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah McKee.
Sorry, I was clicking, it wasn't moving. Right. Q&A. Has anybody got any questions?
Any questions?
You can, if you don't want to say it out loud, you can put it in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Or was I so thorough that no one has a question?
I'll ask a question.
Go for it.
Okay.
I think, well, it's a question. I thought it was a question. It's more of a comment, really. I mean, as you noticed, it was all females on here, and I imagine nearly everybody on here has got a vested interest in this subject. And I just wonder how we, as in HR profession, can engage those, shall we say, possibly the male colleagues, how we can engage them into understanding what this is, and it's not just a women's issue. And I don't know if anyone's got any comments, or Sarah, if you've got any thoughts on how you engage and even tackle that subject that men, you know, I think if you talk about any female issue, men go, ooh, especially if they're a line manager and they've got a woman, you know, who's gone off sick because they've got period pains, they can't deal with it generally. It's been my experience anyway.
It's so true, isn't it? And it is really disappointing that there are no guys that have joined today. And having not been in a corporate environment myself for a very long time, it's a really tricky one. I think, my suggestion of a menopause cafe, where you can invite people to come and join, might be a more informal way of bringing it up, because ultimately what we want to do is teach them what it is, so they can understand the signs to watch out for, and not, as we said, look like a deer in the headlights the minute the word periods and menopause comes up. So I think that's probably a good place to start. It is very, very difficult. There's no pretending otherwise. As women, we are very nurturing, very much want to look after each other, and men are the polar opposite. They keep calm and carry on, and it is very, very difficult. So starting with something informal like a menopause cafe might be a good place to start. Ladies, have you got any other ideas or suggestions?
Yeah, I would say that it's bringing things out into the open, whether that's menopause or anything else. We talk, this is also in relation to other areas of discomfort around things like mental health, bereavement, pregnancy issues, all of these things that occur to people within the workplace. There needs to be an encouragement to start talking about it. And obviously having a menopause cafe is a really great idea, whether it's a cafe or a workshop or just an open forum session where people can have those conversations. I think one of the most important things is getting the buy-in from the top, because otherwise you're kind of pushing fog up a hill, really. It's good to ask the people who lead and manage the organisation to get behind the initiatives. Having policy is really important, because obviously then you can hook any activity off the back of policy. Introducing the new policy, talking about it, what it means, what do adjustments mean, what is the menopause, helping if the policy not only covers what they can and can't do, but also sets out what is included and what might be kind of relevant in the workplace. That's a good start point as well. Having the courage to challenge, if people are making inappropriate comments, or if somebody is having difficulties themselves in the workplace, giving them a safe space to come and talk about it is also quite a good start point. But it's not an impossibility. It just requires some courage and some structure, and getting out there and really just tackling the subject. It's not an impossible subject. It's just one that can sometimes never have been spoken about before. So bringing it into the normal parlance of that company is going to be a good way forward.
Yeah,
I would agree. In our company, so we are a corporate company, and I'm a manager. I'm not an HR lady. I'm just a manager of a team. But a lot of the fellow managers and senior management team are very keen to, show their emotional intelligence, particularly the male colleagues now, because they understand that actually that really helps them promote themselves as well, and that's expected now behavior. So they're actually a bit more open to understanding or wanting to learn these things. Also, they appear. So, for me, following this, I will definitely share those and making sure that they feel included in that journey, and that it's not just a women topic. So I did share this on our management channel, saying if anybody else would like to join, because it is about making the men feel that they can join as well, to be involved in those conversations. And I think we just need to encourage them to come on the journey with us also.
I think that's a really good point, actually, is possibly men might duck out because they feel it's not appropriate for them to contribute, and they don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable, so they might just remove themselves from it, thinking that that they shouldn't be bringing it up. So I think you're absolutely right, being able to say it is okay. Please do feel able to discuss this with us, with me. I think that's a really great way of being able to move things forward, saying to the men, it's allowed. You can bring it up. It's okay. You know, we don't want to hide away from this anymore. We want to bring it out in the open. We want to make sure that everybody knows that the lines of communication are open and we can all discuss it openly and honestly.
There's a really good comment in the chat, provided by Leanne, who they have done some menopause cafe sessions and with women going through the menopause. And apparently, she says, when the word got round, they did actually have some men approaching them, asking if they could have some sessions to find out more about it. So they're going to organise some information sessions with potentially a speaker for the men in the future, but still keep the sessions separate, because not all women feel comfortable sharing in front of the men, which is understandable, you know. So.
Yeah.
And don't forget, for a lot of men, you know, they will have wives, girlfriends, mothers, sisters.
Yeah. It's useful for them to know.
They
are
going to
do them any harm at
encounter.
home either.
Absolutely. Always, you know, knowledge is important. So the more they can know about it, the easier it is then to have those open and honest conversations.
I think it's really interesting, Sarah, what you said in those statistics as well about, you know, more perimenopausal women in the workplace than there is childbearing, and that is a you know, a real shift change in the workforce, that some of those potentially older male bosses need to recognise and see that and react to accordingly. So
that's a surprising statistic, isn't it? That things have completely shifted in the opposite direction, but obviously makes perfect sense in this day and age. Everything's changed, so attitudes need to change as well. So I've got
a question in the chat, if that's okay, because Donna can't get online to the mic. So she said, how would you get someone to become a workplace mentor, as this is something I would like to look into, and would you get them trained? Is there any sort of training around for that?
That's a really interesting question. I've put it out there and then not really thought about how you would make that happen. I'm not wanting to self-promote particularly, but I think probably doing one of my little mini courses would really help if someone was going to take on the role of a mentor. So just to have a background on, you know, so they know what they're talking about when it comes to perimenopause and postmenopause itself. I don't know. I suppose, could you? There's
an opportunity there, Sarah. You could design something.
I could leave it with me. I'm on the case.
There isn't, but there will be soon.
Really good question. I will come up with something that might be appropriate, and I will share it with you all.
It could follow along the same lines as the mental health first aider. You know, not somebody who is going to be tackling the problem, as it were, necessarily, but perhaps signposting, encouraging open conversation and redirecting to additional sources of support. There are obviously, beyond Kingswood Group and beyond the Menopause Coach Sarah, there's a wealth of information available. There are lots of different groups and websites that are specifically set up for supporting people through menopause. So I would always say, as Sarah said earlier, you know, do your research on your kind of well-being. It's also, you know, have a look around, see what else is out there. And, you know, if you can do some of the training with Sarah, that would be great. And, you know, be a go-to person within your organization who can appropriately signpost and support.
Yeah, I would agree. That's perfect.
There was a comment as well. It was a comment rather than a question by Emma. And she said it's worth orienting approach for remote and hybrid workers. It's much more difficult to manage as a sufferer, manager and a colleague. So I think is that more around the point of how you can deliver that information. So not just obviously in the office, but also different channels of communication as well. So maybe a bit like what we're doing, you know, online or calls and things like that.
Yeah, for those working remotely, obviously a lot of the advice that I was suggesting is obviously in a workplace environment and not so much for those that are working remotely from home. So a lot of that won't apply. However, you know, shift patterns, length of shift, just expected to log on at a certain time and log off at a certain time. And, you know, if you're struggling to cope with that, then it's definitely, that's something that needs to be bear in mind. So yeah, that's an interesting comment, an interesting point. It doesn't just affect people that are in an office workplace environment. It encompasses everybody.
Sarah, I have a question, if that's all right, more a comment, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, really good talk, really enjoyed it, from, you know, lots of practical tips and things like that to do. I was thinking previously I've introduced things like wellbeing champions into an organisation. So thinking back to what you were saying about menopause lead, you could introduce people that have, you know, like a little pin or a lanyard that says that that's their responsible role, so that someone can go to that person, and then that can link into the menopause policy. They'd know that, they could talk to them about opening up a conversation with their line manager and that kind of guidance. Sometimes that's really important, and I've helped in the past mental health first aiders take on a bit more of that role as well. So that's something that I think would be really good, if, you know, to build on in what you do. So yeah,
a visual cue. So you literally have got someone in front of you that you know is that person that you can approach if necessary. I think that's a great idea. Because if you don't pick up the email, you know, that email goes around saying, oh, just to let you know, so and so is now the menopause mentor, and you've not read it and you don't know. So having that visual cue, I think is a great idea. Yeah, thank you.
That's good. So yeah, I think as well, if there are adjustments that are needed in the workplace, if you are someone who's experiencing menopause yourself and are not feeling in the strongest position to be able to take that forward, then somebody can advocate for you to act as your support to look at what reasonable adjustments in the workplace might be needed on a permanent or temporary basis to support you.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and linking in with the anxiety and some of the other manifestations, because I often look at this from a more medical perspective. And when you get those kind of manifestations, like the hot sweats, like the anxiety and things, people would ordinarily think that person would be capable of having that conversation. But because of those required kind of medical adjustments required in the workplace, they may need a totally different support approach to enable them to do that.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. We think that it's, you know, it's a really obvious one. Oh yeah, just go and have a chat with the menopause mentor, it'll be fine. But as you've said, if you're struggling with those particular symptoms, anxiety, as you now know, being a huge one, then just the thought of approaching anybody about it, let alone, you know, a menopause mentor, would probably fill you with dread. So it's bearing those things in mind for sure. Yeah, thank you.
I think going back to, you know, going to your GP, I know from people who've spoken to me about when they've gone to see their GP, they've just been automatic, you know, if they have got anxiety or mood swings, they've just been chucked antidepressants, you know, and pills, and actually that's not necessarily the answer. It might help a little bit, but I think if you've got a bit more knowledge, or your employer is able to, you know, have that person you can perhaps talk to, it might mean that you don't just grab the first thing that the GP chucks at you, you know. So
that's so true. And I think you go to the GP because a lot of women are desperate. They're desperate for help. And if your GP tells you that antidepressants are going to help you, and you're desperate for some kind of support, then you'll take whatever you're given. But you're absolutely right, Sarah. It's a knee-jerk response from a lot of GPs. It scares me how much that happens. That antidepressants are the first answer, when you know, a lot of women type in my group, I am not depressed, capital letters, because you're not depressed, you're perimenopausal, when you need a different kind of help. So having had that chat prior with someone that maybe has a little bit more knowledge might mean that you'll go to your GP armed with that info, so that you can hopefully feel confident to say, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I'm here for. What else can you offer me?
Yeah, knowledge is power, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I'm just conscious of time, but so I just wanted to let everybody know that we will be sending follow-up information after the session. We have been recording it, so Julie's going to kindly figure that out, send us the link so we can share that with you. Sarah, I've had a couple of requests for slides on the chat as well. I hope we're all right to share those after.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Obviously your contact details and some links to things, websites, and information that might be useful to you afterwards. But so I'll let everyone go because it's probably time to get back to work.
Yeah.
And if anyone's got any feedback or wants to follow up with anybody in particular in the room, then just let us know.